Hello, my name's Maury McCarthy. I'm 72 years old and a lifelong resident of San Francisco. I grew up in the Sunset District. I was born on Standard Street at St. Mary's Hospital, and my first 2 years were spent in a basement apartment on Noe Street next to my grandparents. My grandmother, of whom had suffered with polio, and my mother was assisting. And we moved out to the avenues when I was about 3 years old. My dad bought a house for $5,000, a junior five they called it. It's on 44th and San Diego, and I lived there for approximately 9 years, and then the family moved to a full five on 39th. And well, there was the social change that hit, and it hit me very hard, and it hit the city very hard. I was sort of a Trojan horse of love, peace, and flower children, and I developed a tremendous drug habit, primarily psychedelics, but I tried other harder drugs, and it took me quite a while to recover from it. And as far as I could get in life was I managed to get through the Coast Guard. I got a BA in creative writing, and I fed myself as a security guard because I was really unable to hold down a regular job. I don't know if it had anything to do with the drugs or not. I was always very high-strung anyway. So I really work wasn't really my thing anyhow. And it actually still isn't. I just work graves for a security company, and that's how I earn my living. And I was never able to get away from San Francisco, although I mightily wanted to when it just dawned on me and a lot of other people that the city was just going in a very wrong direction. And I placed the blame on the hippie movement. I think that it was that the city was a clean, livable, affordable place, and there was redlining, and there was some measure of racial injustice. I totally admit, but I just don't think the price the city ultimately paid was worth its efforts to rectify those problems. I think it's just kind of become, well, rather a hellhole for everybody. These latest attempts at making the city more livable by tweaking the housing situation. I rather feel that the city is big enough to accommodate about the number of people it has now, roughly 800,000 people. I don't think that if the city grows beyond 800,000 people, it just becomes too crowded and unlivable, and there's no way that I think people need space if they're going to be happy. I don't think they can live on top of each other and be happy. However, there is a sizable contingent, led by primarily people like Scott Wiener, that insist on promoting this idea that we're all going to be one big happy family living in this dense housing situation, that little recreational areas can be carved out and people can walk their dogs and bring their children to school and have daycare, and everything's going to be wonderful. I just don't see it that way. I think if people need space, I think a family needs a house. I don't think it's healthy to raise a family in an apartment. I know people have done it, and I know people have done it with success, but I think in the main, I don't think it's a real great idea. But what I think is really not a great idea is this idea of forcing people who have single family dwellings to give up those dwellings to accommodate apartments that they don't want in their neighborhoods. And further compounding the whole mess, there's a move afoot now to demolish the high-rises that are in downtown San Francisco, in the same hopes of being able to tweak the downtown area so that it's livable, affordable, and wonderful. And the only analogy I can come up with is the analogy of the human body. You need a heart, you need lungs, you need a skin covering, and you also need someplace to process the crap. You need a colon, and you need intestines and so forth. And some area of the city, by necessity, has to serve that function. And in the olden days, it was the waterfront of downtown and the South of Market. And that's where the unfortunate people got processed that couldn't quite fit in. And I spent some time down there myself. And I cleaned up the best I could and got the best living situation I could, and I just coped. In addition, they want to take high-rises, put high-rises west of Twin Peaks, and then demolish the high-rises east of Twin Peaks, because they say that the office buildings east of Twin Peaks in the downtown area no longer serve a function because people want to work remotely and they want to have community. And I lived here my entire life. I lived here 72 years. My family goes back over 100 years. My family goes back to 1878. That's where I pegged it, where my first ancestor stepped off the boat from Ireland and established a little store here. And my grandmother's family came from Holland, and they apparently had some speculated on some farmland, and they lost, and they moved into the city, and my grandmother went to work as a nurse and so forth. Maybe that's a very simplistic way of looking at things. I mean, we have the AI and the software engineers and everything, and maybe I'm just a simpleton. I just can't understand moving into somebody's city and then deciding, based on the fact that you make whatever it is you make. It's like if you make $150,000, that's like you're a piker. And based on the fact that you can fit in with some industry, you can decide, well, we're going to knock down the high-rises, which nobody wanted those high-rises in the first place. They built them in order to attract people to the city from elsewhere because we're not big enough. We're not a big enough city. It's always been trying to be too big for its britches, and I never could understand that, because the city had a wonderful scale and it was a wonderful city. And it was maybe not the top international destination. It's always been a destination. It's got a quaintness and a charm, and it has wealth also, and which was established during the gold rush and so forth. But I'm just not understanding these hordes of people. Now they're saying that they don't have enough people downtown. There's only 100,000 people working down there, whereas before there's 400,000. So my question is, great, then have everybody move downtown and they repurpose the existing buildings. But you can't do that because the code says that everybody's got to have a window, or it's always something. And now they just want to tear them down, and you can't even get the information of what buildings are under the Wrecker's Ball, the prospective Wrecker's Ball, for knocking down high-rises in the downtown area and reinstalling, so-called livable structures, and then knocking down the livable structures west of Twin Peaks, and then erecting high-rises, going at the same time. And I don't know, based on this, these transplants are awfully able to assign a great deal of self-importance to themselves. They really, I don't know, they just got the self-confidence. I don't know if they got it out of a needle or out of a bottle, or, they watched brainwashing tapes 24 hours a day, or how they did it. But they certainly have a lot of confidence in their prognostications, despite the fact that everything they try ends up in disaster. And the city's like, it's run by outsiders, and consequently it's a complete mess. And I make this to ask any rational person what possible sense it makes to raise high rises on the eastern half of the city, and then to erect them on the western half of the city. I just don't understand the whole concept. I don't know why they just don't repurpose those high rises, and everybody who wants to live in them, let them live in there. And if they want to try to get a regular single family dwelling, let them earn the money, let them save the money, and let them take out a note and let them pay for it. I don't know why the city has to provide housing for everybody who feels like they're entitled to move here. I just don't understand it. Well, I pretty much ran out of gas already. I hope this reaches somebody, and I hope it sparks a discussion, because it's getting a little bit ridiculous when it gets to a point where I just thought they just didn't like the avenues. I just thought that they didn't like the avenues, that they want to reimagine the avenues in their own image. But then they don't like downtown either. They don't like high rises either. They just want to take high rises, erect high rises where there are none, and tear them down where they do exist. And they've erected hundreds of them, scores of floors high. The biggest one, I believe, is the Salesforce and Millennium Towers, and they've got a couple other ones and there's some pop-off journalist that's writing about dismantling the high rises and making it more livable downtown, because due to remote working, we're all up in one big happy community. So I hope they get it right, and I'm hoping there'll be some kind of a reaction to this latest harebrained transplant idea what to do with San Francisco. Thank you.